Joining me from Jerusalem is Mark Sofer, who is Israel's ambassador to Australia. Mark, always great to see you. I am absolutely certain, I'd bet my house, that you are no friend of these two ministers that we've now sanctioned. Tell us about them.
Well, you'd be betting correctly. I've got $100 on your bet. I'm certainly no fan of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. But frankly, in that I'm not alone. I'm together with well over 90% of the Israeli population. They're polling today around 6 to 7%, and they joined together in the last elections to maximize their electoral strength. But immediately after the elections, they split. You're right, as you mentioned earlier, Andrew, that Ben-Gvir is generally considered to be more extreme than Smotrich, but frankly, they're competing over the same political base or the same political electorate. And so in many ways, and certain occasions, they're going overboard in trying to make each trying to make a more outlandish statement than the other. But as I say, these are two parties pretty much in the same political frame of mind.
So what would our sanctions actually achieve if they're already lacking the support of the vast majority of the Israeli public?
Well, in and of themselves, I don't think the Australian sanctions will have too much effect by themselves on Smotrich and Ben-Gvir. Personally, I don't know of their interaction with Australia. I should suppose it's pretty minimal. But together with the other countries of the UK and Canada, especially the larger ones, I wouldn't say Norway in this particular instance, but certainly UK and Canada, it has a wider meaning and perhaps some practical effects as well. I think more it's showing them, it seems to me, to be some sort of a move, a symbolic move maybe, to bring them out into the isolation of the international community. But I think that if you look at it the wider spectrum, it might have a greater effect than each and every individual country on its own.
But I don't get why they get sanctioned and Mahmoud Abbas does not. People like him. I mean, it's quite extraordinary to me, and that's what really disturbs me here. It seems the Australian government's attitude to Israel is pretty one-sided now, and I just wonder how the Australian government is now seen in Israel.
Well, I won't get into the hypocrisy business because that's more an internal Australian issue. But of course, one can ask, and one should ask questions, if one puts sanctions on people as extreme as Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, is that being applied throughout the international community, including in the Middle East and other countries, as you mentioned? And the truth is that Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have made statements which are so unbelievably awful. You mentioned that in your opening remarks. That many of us in Israel, or the vast majority of us, feel absolutely reviled by calls to wipe out an Arab village, which Smotrich said last year after a terrorist outrage, and later backtracked, said he doesn't mean the people, he means that. All this type of positing, it's really quite abominable for almost all of us. As far as how Australia is viewed in Israel, I think it depends more, Andrew, on who you're talking about. The government, obviously, as you've seen, is obviously very upset with the Australian position on the current government is very on the Middle East, on the Gaza war, on Israel and the Palestinians, and they've made that position quite known publicly on a number of occasions. But I think if you're looking at the wider public, the general public, I'm not 100% sure they're tuned in or they're honed in on Australia and its approach to the Middle East and to Israel. If one thing that has affected us very greatly here in Israel among the general public is the issue of antisemitism in Australia, which we've seen the synagogue being attacked. We all remember the despicable state of screaming in the streets against Israel, against Jews, the demonstrations in Federation Square in Melbourne, etc., etc. And these get very high prominence here. And people often ask, and I must, is enough being done? It's in certain aspects a hypothetical question, but the clamp down must be total, and the punishment must be overriding. And a lot of people ask here, is Australia doing enough to clamp down on the anti-Semitism within the country? That, I think, is more of an issue in the general public, which are much less knowledgeable about how Australia views the Middle East and how Australia views the Israel-Gaza equation.
Well, Mark Sofer, the answer to that is enough being done? The answer is quite clear. No, it is not. Mark Sofer, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciate it.